Monster Hunter Wilds is full of some amazing longsword builds, but none are better than this Dragon Knight build, as well as using focus mode to break parts extremely easy and deal a ton of damage, hitting enemies for up to 500 or 1000 DPS in a single hit. We're also taking advantage of the dragon damage type, allowing us to demolish a lot of the higher end enemies in the game. It boosts that damage really high with a lot of our decorations, really high critical strike, and really high element damage for huge bursts of DPS. I'll show you the entire setup because this might be the best longsword build in the game. So first I want to primarily start talking about the gear. The main thing we're focusing on is high affinity for a high critical chance rate. That way we do more damage, hitting enemies way more often with critical strikes, as well as the dragon element damage. And the good thing about this is the stronger enemies in the game typically are most exploited by the dragon elemental attack damage itself, which we stack very heavily with this build. Again, enemies like Archveld, Gormagala, Rathalos, and the other dragon type enemies are arguably the hardest in the entire game. But with our dragon elemental attacks, we make very light work of them. First, we're going to be utilizing the Stalwart Longsword. Now, this longsword is great because, again, it gives us high affinity at 24%, and it gives us 420 dragon elemental attack damage. But not only that, it gives us critical element level 3, which is a huge deal in this build. And as you can see, critical element level 3 actually allows us to greatly increase elemental damage while active, meaning when we're landing critical hits, which we will with our high affinity, we will automatically be dealing tons of dragon elemental damage, and that will get boosted every time we hit critical hits with the critical element skill. This is the only sword to max that out to level 3 super easy, so this is the one I would highly recommend. It's the perfect pairing. And this is actually in the Gormagala tree, so you have to fight a decent amount of Gormagalas to actually craft it. And make sure when you're doing that, you actually are targeting the Gormagala Filler Plus. The rest of the things you can kind of just get naturally. But as you can see, the Filler Plus, you actually have to get by breaking the antennas. So make sure you're focusing on that, and the rest will be easy to get. We'll get back to the secondary in a minute because I have a great secondary that pairs with this. But ideally, we're going to be using a mix of the Arc Vulcan set. Now, you can use a different set if you want, if you have one you particularly like. But one of the big things we like about this is it actually gives us Archveld's Hunger. And especially when playing solo, taking any healing you can get is really, really great. It regenerates a small amount of health as you attack a monster. So as we're attacking a monster, we're essentially life leeching that monster, hitting it for damage, but regaining health all on our own. With a full set of 4, you're actually guaranteeing that you recover a decent amount of health. Now, the other thing to keep in mind, especially when playing with a group, this also gives you Alluring Pelt, or the diversion skill, which actually increases the attention drawn to you when attacking a monster. So when you attack a monster and you play especially in a group, just keep in mind you are going to be essentially aggroing that monster to you. And I'll get into some of the defensive style of play with this build and how easy it is, but that is greatly going to help you, especially when playing with a group, because you have a ton of counter abilities with this build that allow you to deal tons and tons of damage. But ideally, we'll start with the Arc Vulcan Helm B, and we're going to use the entire beta set except for the Arc Vulcan Greaves, which we will use the alpha set. Just to show you, even for future builds, the reason we're doing that is if you look up in the top right, you can see, for instance, this helmet allows us to get a level 3 decoration, a level 2 decoration, and then a level 1. You look up at the alpha set, you actually don't get any decoration slots here, which is a complete waste. Decorations are the thing that makes your build absolutely busted. And the same goes for the Guardian Archveld set. You only get 2 level 1s. The level 3s and level 2s are really important. Next, before we go over the armor, I'll show you the stats here on the right of the stuff you really want to target. So some of the main things you're going to be targeting with this build are critical element, which you'll get level 3 automatically from your Stalwart sword. That way we're dealing much higher elemental dragon damage on all of our critical hits, or all of our element damage in general, even if you're using another elemental ability. And we're also going to want dragon attack at level 3 as well. This is best by putting a level 3 dragon gem in your Stalwart sword, and that way we're getting plus 20% dragon attack added to our elemental attack, plus a bonus plus 60, making our dragon elemental attack not only extremely buff from critical element, but extremely buff from dragon attack as well. And once those kind of start to multiply together when you're in a fight, it deals tons and tons of damage. This combo is so good. Now, the other 3 things you're really going to want are weakness exploit, convert element, and quick sheath. And you're going to want to try and max those out. One of the big things for this is the Arc Vulcan Coil Waist Armor and the Arc Vulcan Greaves. The Arc Vulcan Greaves are going to give you level 1 Convert Element and level 2 Quick Sheath. Convert Element is extremely important because at level 3, it further increases additional dragon damage and greatly increases dragon attack, meaning we're going to be triple buffing and triple stacking our dragon attack damage, resulting in massive damage output for every single situation basically. So you want to make sure you have Convert Element maxed out with a combination of the gear itself and decorations. Secondly, we want Weakness Exploit at level 5. This makes it so attacks that hit weak points have 30% increased affinity, allowing us to make sure we're basically always hitting a critical hit, which then again will proc our other things like Critical Element, upping our critical strike damage with an extra 15% on wounds. So if you're hitting a weak point and a wound, you're basically guaranteed all critical strikes, meaning whether you're using your focus mode attack to hit a huge damage number, or you do your Helmbreaker combo on it, it is going to deal tons of damage. And then Quick Sheath at level 3, which allows us to be extremely quick in countering and dodging away from enemies and fill up your spirit bar very quickly, which I'll go over when I show you how to play the build. Now, some of the other important things like Critical Boost and Critical Eye are always great to have if you can get them on decorations. You can see we actually have Critical Boost as a decoration on our sword, and even just having Critical Boost at level 1 gives us an automatic 28% extra damage dealt to critical hits. So whether you have this at level 2 or level 4, it's not as huge of a difference, but you want to make sure, since we're always dealing critical hits, you have this at least level 1 while you're getting the build together, because it gives you a lot of extra damage this way. And additionally, if you can find the Critical Eye skill, this will also help increase our affinity even more than it already is, to ensure we're basically always getting critical strikes for those big damage hits. And again, things like Guard and other skills that I have on here that I don't really mention, you can replace once you find things that are better, because I'm kind of just rolling with what I have because I don't have the perfect setup yet. Another great thing to look out for, if you happen to get Agitator, you can put that on for additional affinity. One of the other great things is Part Breaker. If you can get level 3 Part Breaker, it increases your part damage. If you can get Part Breaker, this is actually really good, especially at level 3, for dealing tons of damage when we use our Focus Strike, which is going to help us deal most of our huge hits. This not only gives you extra damage, but at level 3, it gives you 30% extra damage when you're actually using your Focus Strike on destroying a wound, meaning that's what allows us to help us hit 500, 600, 700, even 1,000 damage on Focus Strikes, which can basically just break almost any part on a monster, sometimes with one hit. Now for our sword, we're going to be using the Dragon level 3 gem. This is going to help us again get that extra dragon attack damage. We obviously have Critical Element level 3 that comes on the sword for our extra elemental damage as well. We have Critical Boost here, so that way it increases our damage dealt by critical hits, which we should be hitting almost every single time. It's going to bump that damage up even at level 1 to 28%. So whether you have a high level in this or not, make sure you have at least 1 level in Critical Boost. Critical Eye, so that way it ups our affinity by a pretty decent percentage. That way we're ensuring our critical hits every time. And then Guard you can replace with something else. It's just what happened to be on my jewel. But anything evasion related or damage related or elemental damage related is really still great here. And then next for our helmet, we're going to be using the Chain Jewel level 3 to add Burst. This is actually going to make us gain a temporary attack and element boost, which once we hit an enemy 5 times, we actually get a much larger boost, which makes this skill really good. Not only that, we're again using Convert Element here, Recovery up. You can take other damage skills here, but this is still nice to have. And Part Breaker, so we increase that part damage as we're trying to get that to level 3. For our chest, we're going to be taking again the Chain Jewel, so that way we add another level to Burst for even more damage there. We get Weakness Exploit here, so that we're taking max advantage of hitting those weak points and dealing additional damage on wounds. And also Evade Window, because it just makes dodging and countering enemies that much easier, since it opens up our invulnerability window. And then for our gloves, you can take more damage jewels as you get them, but until you get them, it's still perfectly fine if you want to take evasion jewels. That way it increases our evasion window, because again, it will make it much easier to counter enemies that way, but land those evades, increase our spirit bar because of them. I like adaptability, that way it negates the effects of heat and cold, just because I don't like to have to worry about drinking potions for them all the time. And then for our waist armor, we have the Sheath Jewel, so we get level 1 to Quick Sheath. That combined with your Greaves give automatic Quick Sheath level 2, makes it so you have a maxed level 3 Quick Sheath, meaning we can counter enemies at the fastest speed possible. This comes with Recovery Speed and Weakness Exploit level 2, again making that a max at 5. And then the Greaves here we have, again, it comes with Quick Sheath level 2, level 1 Convert Element. We have Part Breaker level 1 here and Recovery up level 1. That way we again increase our healing and we increase our overall Part Breaker damage. And you can see on the build currently we only have Part Breaker at level 2, but getting it to level 3 will deal even more damage for your build. And for our talisman, we have the Exploiter Charm level 2. Again, the easiest way to get this is to just simply go to Gemma. You can actually go to Forge Upgrade Talismans. Here's where you want to come and grab the Exploit Charm level 1, and this is going to then be able to let you upgrade it into a level 2. The important thing with this is it gives us level 2 Weakness Exploit, which we actually really need to get our Weakness Exploit to a level 5 to be dealing that much higher level of damage. So this is a big part of the build. And the same for the Corrupted Mantle. It's going to decrease our health but increase our affinity and weapon performance. And the more we attack with this mantle activated means we'll be doing even more damage. So once you activate this with all of the other stuff in place, you will be just destroying everyone in your way. And with the automatic health leech from our attacks, we're going to be healing ourselves while we fight anyways, meaning the health change doesn't really make that much of a difference. Again, when hitting weak points or dealing damage to wounds, that's when you're going to be dealing so much damage. It is actually just insane. And again, the Corrupted Mantle here shrinks our health pool, but that's perfectly okay because again, we're going to be leeching all of our health back for the most part and dealing a ton of damage. You can see our health going completely right back up there after landing that combo, and it just allows us to keep our health fully up while also dealing more damage every single time we hit an enemy and just completely start building our damage through the roof. Again, allowing us to quick sheath very quickly to counter enemies and then get our spirit gauge up and then go right back into more combos where we're inflicting more wounds and dealing even more damage. That combined with also using our Helm Breaker allows us again to just demolish enemies, even deal like 1500 DPS in a single swing. And as you can see, even just doing a regular Crimson Slash Spirit Blade combo, we're able to deal probably about 3000 damage in about 6 or 7 seconds. And then when you combine that with the wounds and things like your Spirit Helm Breaker, you can see us jump up from 4309 damage all the way up to 5100, meaning you can deal up to like 1500 damage just from a single Helm Breaker, especially on dragon enemies when you're hitting wounds and you're breaking their parts. It really gives you an insane damage combo. Now again, the overall idea how we use this build, we're primarily focusing on hitting enemies in their weak points, destroying their wounds. That's going to give us a ton of affinity and extra damage boost, and then that will turn into huge hits on parts, allow you to break parts for extra damage, and then cause wounds everywhere else as well. Since our damage will be so buffed, it will naturally create other wounds on the body when you're hitting them because of such a high damage. So we're primarily using our overhead slash as one of our main generators for our spirit gauge, as well as our spirit blade attack, so we can gain a level on our spirit gauge to try and get us to the red meter, so that way we can really start dealing tons of damage quick. For instance, as you can see, we're going to quick sheath here, and then we're going to counter this, and then we can actually put this right into another quick sheath and then counter the next attack. You can chain your quick sheath very, very quickly back to back, allowing you to basically counter every single attack of an enemy, meaning you can almost never get hit this way. Again, this allows you to fill up your spirit gauge extremely quickly, getting you in that red zone very quickly, allowing us to start dealing out a ton of our damage. If you decide to use your foresight, you can actually combo this again to fill up your spirit gauge very quickly and also get out of the way when enemies are trying to hit you, allowing us to stay in that red zone for even longer than before and just really just continue to deal damage nonstop. And one of the other great things is no matter what kind of attack you're doing, whether you're just doing overhead slashes or whether you're doing spirit blade attacks, or you're in a spot where you're running out of spirit, meaning you're not going to actually be able to complete that spirit blade. One of the things you can actually do is if you're in the middle of your spirit blade attacks where you're trying to fill up your spirit gauge, you can actually use the rising slash button to chain any one of these attacks together, so that way you can gain some spirit while you're still in the attack. And even though you're chaining it right in the middle, you can continue off with your spirit blade and your spirit round slash right where you left off in case you happen to run out of spirit mid combo. I found that is extremely helpful for upping my spirit gauge. Not to mention you can chain other attacks with this. Like if you're using Crimson Slash, you can throw in Rising Slash and then continue to Crimson Slash. And one of the best combos for regular damage currently for the Longsword is using Crimson Slash with Spirit Blade back to back. And this combo just allows you to deal the biggest amount of DPS with regular hits, because you can hit so many frequent times in a row. You can combo these extremely quick, and again, the more damage you do, especially against weak parts. Now also the secondary weapon, as I was going to talk about, as I haven't got to test it yet, but I'm interested to know if any of you guys use it, is the Gore Magala Dragon Bow. And this again uses our Dragon Elemental damage as well as high affinity, meaning it stats perfectly with the gems that we already have in all of our gear, allowing us to really again stack our damage pretty much in the same way. So this is a great secondary option for some range damage. I'm excited to try it. I think it's going to be really, really good. Now, in terms of Artian weapons, you can definitely use an Artian weapon. I've tried building one in a dragon version. As you can see, we have this one right here. It has less attack, about the same dragon elemental damage with the same affinity, but overall, again, it has less attack, but it has more spots for gem slots. The downside is you lose level 3 critical element right off the bat, and overall it just makes the regular sword instead of the Aryan sword a lot more worth it. So you can by all means use an Aryan weapon, but I just like the typical crafted weapon because again, it comes with the skills we want and the stats itself are very, very good. Let me know in the comments if you use a build similar or you have any suggestions that might make the build better. Enjoy this fight at the end, like the video, and subscribe if you guys are new.